I'm Miranda Kennedy, 29, a financial analyst in Chicago. I've always been the responsible one while my sister Tiffany floated through life on our parents' generosity. I never expected that Friday evening call that changed everything. My parents, Thomas and Barbara, casually announced they had sold their house and were moving in with me, temporarily, after investing their entire nest egg in Tiffany's new business. I never imagined having to choose between my family's expectations and my carefully planned future. But sometimes life forces your hand, and you discover exactly how far you're willing to go to protect what you've built, even if it means being called selfish by the people who should understand you best. Before I dive deeper into the story, I'd love to know where you're watching from. Drop your location in the comments below. If this family drama already sounds familiar, give this video a like and subscribe to my channel for more real-life stories about setting boundaries and navigating complicated family dynamics. Now, let me take you back to the beginning of how this all unfolded. Growing up as the eldest daughter in the Kennedy family wasn't easy. From an early age, I quickly learned that responsibility wasn't just expected of me, it was demanded. While my parents attended every one of Tiffany's dance recitals and art shows, they rarely made it to my academic competitions or honor society inductions. Despite the lack of attention, I thrived academically, graduating as valedictorian and earning a partial scholarship to Northwestern University. College was a juggling act of classes, studying, and part-time jobs. I worked 20 hours weekly at the campus bookstore and another 15 hours waiting tables on weekends. My parents contributed what they could to my tuition, but with Tiffany starting college the same year I began my sophomore year, their financial resources were stretched thin. I took out minimal student loans, determined to graduate with as little debt as possible. Through careful budgeting and many sleepless nights, I graduated with honors with a degree in finance, carrying only $15,000 in student loan debt, which I paid off within 3 years of working. My entry-level position at Westbrook Financial in downtown Chicago wasn't glamorous. I started in a windowless cubicle crunching numbers for senior analysts, but I never complained. Each day was an opportunity to prove myself and climb the corporate ladder. 7 years of dedication, volunteering for additional projects, and pursuing additional certifications paid off. I earned my current position as a senior financial analyst, complete with my own office overlooking the Chicago River. The contrast with my sister Tiffany couldn't be starker. While I was building my career brick by brick, Tiffany bounced between majors at an expensive private college. She started with art history, switched to psychology after 2 semesters, then declared business her true calling during her junior year. Despite her academic indecision, our parents funded her semester abroad in Paris to find herself during a time when Dad was working overtime to make ends meet. After college, Tiffany's pattern continued with a series of failed business ventures. First came Jewels by Tiffany, handcrafted accessories that cost more to make than she could sell them for. Next was her social media consulting firm that dissolved after 3 months when she realized the work involved actual analytics and not just posting pretty pictures. The organic food delivery service lasted slightly longer at 6 months before suppliers stopped working with her due to late payments. Each failure ended the same way: tearful calls to our parents, emergency loans that were never repaid, and fresh enthusiasm for the next big idea. Meanwhile, I built a life of careful planning and deliberate choices. My promotion to senior financial analyst came with a substantial salary increase, but I maintained the same standard of living. Every additional dollar went toward my 5-year plan to purchase my own home. My investment portfolio, though modest, grew steadily through consistent monthly contributions. 2 years ago, I met Nathan Morgan, a software engineer at a tech startup, during a mutual friend's birthday celebration. Unlike previous relationships that fizzled when partners couldn't understand my focus on financial security, Nathan and I aligned perfectly. He respected my budgeting system and shared similar goals of homeownership and early retirement. Our relationship progressed cautiously but steadily, with recent conversations hinting at a shared future together. My current living situation had worked well for the past 3 years. I shared a spacious 2-bedroom apartment in Lincoln Park with my roommate Olivia, a pediatric nurse. We split the $2,400 monthly rent equally and maintained a comfortable, drama-free home. However, Olivia recently announced she was moving in with her boyfriend at the end of the month, leaving me with a decision: find a new roommate or use this as an opportunity to accelerate my savings plan. After careful consideration and multiple spreadsheet projections, I chose to downsize dramatically. I found a 450-square-foot studio apartment in a charming historic building in Lakeview. The $1,100 monthly rent would allow me to add an additional $700 to my home savings fund each month. The apartment was tiny but efficient, with built-in storage solutions and a small Juliet balcony perfect for my herb garden. I signed the lease last week, paid the security deposit, and began selling furniture that wouldn't fit in my new space. I was scheduled to move in 3 weeks, and despite the significant downsizing, I felt excited about this step toward my financial goals. Recent family interactions gave no indication of the bomb about to drop. During Christmas dinner 4 months ago, Dad confidently explained their retirement was on solid ground with their home nearly paid off and their 401(k)s performing well. Mom showed me pictures of the Alaska cruise they were planning for their 35th wedding anniversary. During our last phone call 2 weeks ago, Dad mentioned a great investment opportunity but didn't elaborate. Mom had asked oddly specific questions about my apartment size and whether I enjoyed having a guest bedroom, which I'd brushed off as casual conversation. Tiffany had been calling weekly with increasing excitement about her new, revolutionary pet spa concept called Possum Paradise. She described luxury grooming services, pedicures, and organic treats that would transform the pet care industry. I responded with appropriate enthusiasm while privately wondering how this venture would differ from her previous failures. Still, I offered supportive feedback on her business name and logo design, never imagining how deeply her plans would soon impact my life. Friday evening arrived after an exhausting week finalizing quarterly reports at Westbrook Financial. I had just settled onto my couch with a glass of wine and takeout Thai food when my phone rang. Seeing Dad on the caller ID, I answered with my usual warmth, expecting our typical weekend catch-up call. "Miranda, sweetie." Dad's voice carried an unusual level of excitement. "Your mother and I have big news." Before I could respond, Mom's voice cut in from the extension. "We can't wait to tell you, honey." "What's going on?" I asked, taking another sip of wine, completely unprepared for their announcement. "We sold the house," Dad exclaimed. "And we're coming to stay with you for a while." The Thai food suddenly lost its appeal as I processed his words. "You sold the house? The house you've lived in for 30 years? What do you mean?" Mom jumped in, her voice bubbling with enthusiasm that seemed discordant with the gravity of what they were saying. "It's such an amazing opportunity, Miranda. Tiffany came to us with this incredible business plan for her luxury pet spa. The market research shows it's going to be huge. We invested $350,000 in Possum Paradise," Dad continued proudly. "That's basically the equity from the house and a bit from our savings. Tiffany says we'll double our money in 2 years." My stomach dropped. Their entire retirement security liquidated for Tiffany's latest venture. A venture led by someone whose longest job was a 6-month stint at a coffee shop. Someone who had never successfully managed a business, let alone one requiring significant capital investment. "Did you have someone review the business plan?" I asked, trying to keep my voice level. "A financial advisor or attorney?" "Oh." Tiffany had everything professionally prepared, Mom assured me, though something in her tone suggested she hadn't actually seen these professional documents herself. "She worked with her friend Vincent, who has a business degree." "The point is," Dad continued, "we're in a bit of a transition period now. The house closes next Wednesday, and the movers are scheduled for Thursday. We thought we'd stay in your second bedroom," Mom added as if this were the most natural conclusion. "Just until Tiffany's business takes off, 6 months tops. You've always said how spacious your apartment is." The casual presumption left me speechless. No discussion. No request. Just an announcement of their imminent arrival and the expectation of indefinite housing. "I don't have a second bedroom anymore," I finally managed. "I signed a lease on a studio apartment last week. It's only 450 square feet. I'm moving at the end of the month. The line went silent for a moment before Dad responded dismissively. You can just back out of the lease, Miranda. Explain the situation, and they'll understand. Family comes first. I've already paid the security deposit and first month's rent, I explained. And I've sold half my furniture because it won't fit. Well, you can put the rest in storage, Mom suggested, as if I hadn't spoken. We don't need much space. Your father and I can make do on a pull-out sofa if necessary. That's not possible in a 450 square foot studio, I said, my heart racing as I tried to make them understand. There's barely room for my bed and a small couch. It's designed for one person. Dad's voice hardened. Miranda, we've always supported you. Now it's your turn to support us. You have a comfortable salary and no dependents. We sacrificed to put you through college. Actually, I had scholarships and worked through school, I reminded him gently. And I still have financial goals I'm working toward. My lease is legally binding. I can't believe you're being so selfish, Mom said, her voice cracking with tears. After everything we've done for you, you won't even help us for a few months. Where are we supposed to go? The manipulation was so familiar it made my chest tighten. The implication was clear. If I refused, I didn't love them. If I prioritized my financial security, I was ungrateful. If I maintained my boundaries, I was a bad daughter. I need to think about this, I said finally, my voice barely above a whisper. This is a lot to process. Can I call you tomorrow? After extracting a promise to call them by noon the next day, they hung up. I immediately ran to the bathroom and threw up, my body physically rejecting the stress of the situation. I spent the night pacing my apartment, alternating between rage at their presumption and guilt at the thought of refusing them. By morning, I had dark circles under my eyes and no clear solution to my predicament. By Saturday morning, I felt like I was drowning. I texted Vanessa Taylor, my best friend since college, with a simple 911 brunch emergency. Within an hour, we were seated at our favorite cafe, Maple and Ash, where I unloaded the entire situation between bites of barely touched avocado toast. Vanessa's reaction was immediate and protective. Are you kidding me? They didn't even ask if they could stay with you? They just announced it. Her outrage validated the knot of anger I'd been suppressing. They've always done this, I explained. Act first. Assume I'll accommodate later. But this is bigger than borrowing my car or changing holiday plans last minute. This is my entire life. Vanessa reached across the table and squeezed my hand. Miranda, I've known your family for years and I love them, but this pattern has to stop. They enable Tiffany, then expect you to enable them. But they're my parents, I said, voicing the guilt that had kept me awake. What if they really have nowhere to go? They had options, Vanessa countered firmly. They could have consulted a financial advisor. They could have invested a smaller amount in Tiffany's business. They could have waited to sell their house until the business showed signs of success. She paused, making sure I was listening. This is not your emergency to fix. She reminded me of my years of disciplined saving, the career I'd built through hard work, and the future I was planning with Nathan. If you let them move in, even temporarily, you're sacrificing your goals for Tiffany's business gamble. And temporary has a way of becoming permanent. After brunch, I called Nathan, who came directly to my apartment. His face reflected concern as I explained the situation. I'm worried about what this means for us, he admitted after listening carefully. We've been talking about moving in together next year, saving for a home together. If your parents move in with you indefinitely? The implication hung in the air. Our carefully discussed future plans would be delayed, possibly indefinitely. Last year, my uncle asked to move in with my parents after his divorce, Nathan shared. It was supposed to be for 3 months. He stayed for 18, and it put tremendous strain on my parents' marriage. Together, we researched affordable senior living communities in Chicago and the suburbs. We found several nice options within my parents' Social Security income range, assuming they hadn't already spent those funds as well. Monday morning, I scheduled an emergency meeting with my financial advisor, Diana Chen. She listened intently as I explained the situation, then ran projections on my financial future if I supported 2 additional adults. Miranda, based on your current salary and expenses, supporting your parents would delay your home purchase by at least 5 years, Diana explained, showing me the spreadsheet. If you also delay your retirement contributions to accommodate them, you're looking at working an additional 7 to 10 years before you can retire. The numbers were sobering. Diana's professional assessment confirmed what I already knew intuitively. I could not set my financial future on fire to keep my parents warm after they'd willingly jumped into the cold. I'm concerned about your parents' financial decision-making, Diana added. Liquidating their primary residence and retirement accounts for an unproven business represents a high-risk strategy that no financial professional would recommend, especially at their age. During lunch break the next day, I confided in my co-worker Patricia Johnson, who had housed her mother-in-law for 3 years. The financial cost was just the beginning, Patricia warned. There were the emotional costs, the privacy issues, the constant negotiation of household rules. My marriage nearly didn't survive it. She described how temporarily kept extending as her mother-in-law found reasons why the timing wasn't right to move out. If you decide to help them, get everything in writing. Set a firm end date. Establish who pays for what. Even then, be prepared for guilt trips when you enforce those boundaries. That evening, I did something I'd never done before. I called Tiffany's business partner, Vincent Rodriguez, directly. I introduced myself as a concerned family member wanting to better understand the business venture my parents had invested in. Vincent hesitated initially, but opened up when I explained the extent of my parents' investment. Look, we did some market research, but probably not as much as we should have, he admitted. Tiffany was confident about the location, but I had concerns about the lease cost. He revealed they'd spent nearly $80,000 already on imported fixtures and luxury elements before even signing the lease. There were 3 established pet grooming businesses within a 2-mile radius of their planned location. Vincent had raised concerns, but Tiffany had dismissed them, insisting her vision would attract a different clientele. I believe in the concept, Vincent said carefully, but I think Tiffany's timeline might be optimistic. These things usually take longer to become profitable than anticipated. My final investigation was into my parents' exact financial situation. I called their longtime accountant, Martin Lewis, under the pretense of having a tax question about gifting. I was sorry to hear about your parents' decision to liquidate their assets, Martin said after we exchanged pleasantries. I advised against it, of course. What exactly did they liquidate? I asked, my stomach tightening. Not just the house, Martin confirmed my fears. They also cashed out their IRAs and 401ks. With the penalties, they lost about 20% of those funds. He hesitated before adding, this isn't the first significant sum they've given your sister. There were loans totaling about $75,000 over the past 5 years. None repaid, as far as I know. By Wednesday evening, I had a complete picture. My parents had sacrificed their financial security for Tiffany's unproven business, expected me to sacrifice mine to accommodate the consequences of their decision, and had no backup plan if the business failed. The weight of responsibility felt crushing, but for the first time, I understood that accepting it would help no one in the long run. Wednesday night found me at my kitchen table surrounded by notes, spreadsheets, and a legal pad filled with pros and cons. I'd barely slept in 5 days, and the deadline to call my parents with a decision loomed like a storm cloud. I poured a glass of wine and began writing in my journal, something I did whenever faced with a complex problem. If I let them move in, I wrote, I lose my independence, delay my financial goals by 5+ years, potentially damage my relationship with Nathan, and enable a pattern that will likely repeat when Tiffany's business fails. If I refuse, I cause immediate family conflict, suffer guilt and possible estrangement, but maintain my boundaries and financial health. As I wrote, memories surfaced from childhood, staying silent when Tiffany got a car for her 16th birthday while I had taken the bus to school, accepting that my college fund had been depleted for Tiffany's private school tuition. Smiling through holidays when Tiffany received extravagant gifts while I got practical items. I had spent a lifetime accommodating my family's preferential treatment of my sister. This situation was merely the most extreme example of a lifelong pattern. Thursday morning, I had an emergency session with Dr. Harper, my therapist. What you're experiencing is the consequence of being the capable child in a family system that enables the struggling child, she explained. Your parents expect you to accommodate because you've always accommodated, but that doesn't mean you must continue. She guided me through meditation exercises to manage my anxiety and helped me craft language for setting boundaries without unnecessary harshness. Remember, setting boundaries isn't selfish, Dr. Harper emphasized. It's an act of self-care and, ultimately, helps create healthier relationships. That afternoon, I attempted a reasonable compromise, calling my parents with what I thought was a generous offer. I've been researching options, I began carefully. There's a nice senior apartment complex near Tiffany's spa location. It's affordable on your Social Security income, and I could help with the security deposit and moving expenses. Senior apartments? Mom's voice rose an octave. We're only in our early 60s, Miranda. We're not ready for a retirement home. It's not a retirement home, I clarified. It's an apartment complex with some amenities for older adults. There's a community garden and social activities, but it's independent living. Absolutely not, Dad declared. We've always imagined spending this time of our lives in a family environment, not surrounded by old people playing bingo. I tried again. What about a short-term rental? There are furnished apartments available on 3-month leases. I could help with the first month's rent while you get settled. Do you have any idea what short-term rentals cost in Chicago? Dad demanded. It would eat through what little cash we have left after investing in Tiffany's business. We need to conserve our resources. What about staying with Tiffany? I suggested. She has that 2-bedroom apartment, and she's the one you're investing in. Tiffany needs to focus on making the business successful, Mom replied dismissively. She can't have distractions. Besides, her place is too small. The irony of her statement, given that my new studio was half the size of Tiffany's apartment, wasn't lost on me. Miranda, Mom's voice turned tearful. I can't believe you're abandoning us like this. After all we've done for you. I never thought my own daughter would leave us homeless. I ended the call promising to think further, but the conversation had clarified something important. My parents weren't interested in solutions that required any compromise on their part. They wanted the solution that cost them nothing, regardless of what it cost me. Later that evening, I received an unexpected call from Tiffany. Mom says you're being difficult about them staying with you. She began without preamble. I'm moving into a studio apartment, I explained. There literally isn't room for 3 adults. Can't you just get a bigger place? Tiffany asked, as if suggesting I change my lunch order. That would increase my expenses significantly, I pointed out. I have financial goals I'm working toward. Yeah, but this is family, she countered. Besides, it's probably excessive for them to invest their entire retirement, but the business is going to be amazing, Miranda. You should see the imported Italian grooming stations we ordered. I paused, processing her casual admission. How much have you spent already? About $50,000 on fixtures and equipment, she replied proudly. The marble water features for the waiting area are gorgeous. Tiffany, that's a significant portion of their investment before you've even opened, I said carefully. Well, yeah, quality costs money. But it'll be worth it, she replied confidently. Anyway, I figured you'd come through on the housing situation. You always figure things out. Her entitled assumption that I would solve our parents' housing crisis while she spent their retirement on marble fixtures was the final straw. After hanging up, I paced my apartment until 3 a.m. when clarity finally emerged through the fog of exhaustion and stress. This wasn't about one business venture or one housing crisis. This was about a family pattern that would continue indefinitely if I didn't break the cycle. My enabling would hurt everyone. My parents would never establish appropriate boundaries with Tiffany. Tiffany would never face the consequences of her actions, and I would sacrifice my future on the altar of dysfunctional family dynamics. By morning, my decision was made. I texted my parents requesting a family meeting at a neutral location on Saturday. For the first time in days, I slept soundly, the clarity of my decision providing peace despite the difficult conversation ahead. I spent Friday preparing for the confrontation. I created a folder containing financial projections, printouts of affordable housing options, and a clear budget showing why I couldn't support additional household members. I rehearsed responses to emotional manipulation with Vanessa, who agreed to be on standby for moral support. Nathan promised to wait at a nearby coffee shop in case I needed immediate support afterward. Saturday morning arrived with a knot of anxiety in my stomach. I dressed carefully in a professional outfit that made me feel confident and capable. As I prepared to leave for the meeting, I hesitated momentarily, wondering if I was making the right choice. Then I remembered Dr. Harper's words. Setting boundaries isn't about punishing others. It's about protecting yourself so you can show up as your best self in relationships. With that reminder, I grabbed my folder and headed out the door. I arrived at Café Laurent 20 minutes early, selecting a corner table that offered some privacy, while still being in a public space. I ordered a black coffee and arranged my materials neatly, taking deep breaths to calm my racing heart. My parents arrived 15 minutes late, immediately complaining about parking. Mom looked tired, her usually perfect makeup slightly smudged. Dad's face was set in the stern expression I recognized from childhood discussions about my disappointing B-plus grades. To my surprise, Tiffany trailed behind them, accompanied by a man I assumed was Vincent, her business partner. "Sorry we're late," Mom said, though her tone suggested irritation rather than apology. Traffic was terrible, and then we had to circle for parking. "I could have picked you up from your hotel," I offered. "Where are you staying?" An uncomfortable glance passed between my parents. "We're at the Holiday Inn Express," Dad finally admitted. "Temporary arrangement until we get settled with you." The presumption still hung in the air, but I pushed ahead with my plan. "Thank you all for meeting me. I wanted to discuss this situation face to face, because it's important." Vincent extended his hand. "I'm Vincent Rodriguez, Tiffany's business partner. I hope you don't mind me joining. I thought I might offer some perspective on the business timeline." I shook his hand, grateful for his professional tone. "Not at all. I appreciate you coming." After everyone ordered drinks, I took a deep breath and began my prepared statement. "I want to start by saying I love you all, and I want to find a solution that works for everyone. That said, I need to clarify my situation." I opened my folder and explained my financial position clearly and calmly. I detailed my current budget, my savings goals, and the binding lease I'd signed for the studio apartment. I showed them photos of the space to illustrate how physically impossible it would be to accommodate 2 additional adults. "I want to help," I continued. "So, I've researched some alternatives." I presented the information on senior-friendly apartments, short-term rentals, and even a house-sitting opportunity I'd found through a coworker. "I can offer financial support of $500 monthly for 1 year to help with the transition," I concluded. "But I cannot offer housing in my new apartment. It's simply not physically possible." The table fell silent for a moment before Dad's fist came down hard, causing the coffee cups to jump. "This is ridiculous," he sputtered, his face reddening. "We paid for your college education, and this is how you repay us?" "Thomas." Mom placed a hand on his arm while dabbing at tears with her napkin. "Let's not make a scene." But her theatrical sniffling was already drawing curious glances from nearby tables. "Miranda has always been selfish," Tiffany interjected. "Remember when she wouldn't let me borrow her car for prom after I totaled mine?" "That's not relevant to the current situation," I responded calmly, though my hands trembled beneath the table. "It shows a pattern," Dad argued. "Your mother and I sacrificed vacations, new cars, everything to give you girls opportunities. And now when we need a little help, you can't be bothered." "I wasn't invited on those vacations," I pointed out quietly. "And my college was mostly covered by scholarships I earned. I worked through school while Tiffany got a full ride and spending money." "Here we go again with the martyr routine," Tiffany rolled her eyes. "Just because you chose to work doesn't mean you were forced to." "Actually, it does," I countered, years of resentment finally finding voice. My college fund was spent on your private high school tuition after you got kicked out of public school. I had no choice but to work. Mom gasped. Miranda, we never favored either of you. Mom, you literally called me last Christmas to ask what to get Tiffany because, and I quote, nothing is too good for my baby girl, while you got me a $25 gift card to Target. Vincent shifted uncomfortably in his seat. Perhaps we should focus on the current situation rather than past grievances. The current situation is that Miranda is refusing to help her family, Dad snapped. I'm offering help, I clarified. Just not the specific help you're demanding. Even if the business struggles at first, it won't be more than a few months before we start seeing returns, Tiffany insisted. You're making this into a bigger deal than it needs to be. I turned to her, picking up on her phrasing. What do you mean if it struggles at first? I thought the business plan projected immediate profitability. Tiffany glanced at Vincent, who looked suddenly interested in his coffee. Well, you know, all businesses have an adjustment period, she hedged. What's the actual projected timeline to profitability? I asked Vincent directly. He cleared his throat. The business plan projects breaking even at approximately 24 months, assuming we meet all our customer acquisition targets. 2 years. Mom's voice rose. You told us 6 months. That's best case scenario, Tiffany quickly interjected. But realistically, these things take time. And that assumes no unforeseen expenses or competitive responses from established businesses in the area, Vincent added, earning a glare from Tiffany. So you're saying my parents invested their entire retirement in a business that won't generate returns for at least 2 years, possibly longer? I clarified. They invested in my dream, Tiffany countered defensively, which is more than they ever did for you. They paid for your education, your car, your failed businesses, and now they've given you their retirement, I listed quietly. I think they've invested plenty in both of us, Tiffany. Dad's expression had shifted from anger to confusion as he processed the timeline revelation. Why didn't you tell us it would take so long to see returns? I did say it would take time, Tiffany insisted. You just heard what you wanted to hear. We heard what you led us to believe, Mom countered, her tears now genuine. Anyway, Tiffany waved dismissively. That's beside the point. Miranda has plenty of room at her place. She's just being difficult. I literally don't, I said, sliding my phone across the table with photos of the studio apartment. This is my new place. It's 450 square feet. There's a kitchenette, a bathroom, and one main room that serves as bedroom and living area. Where exactly do you propose 2 additional adults would sleep? Mom stared at the photos, her expression hardening. You could have told us you were planning this move before we sold the house. I didn't know you were selling the house, I reminded her. You made that decision without consulting me, just like you're trying to make decisions about my living arrangements without consulting me. So you're just going to leave us homeless? Dad demanded. You're not homeless. You're in a hotel that you can afford for now, and I've presented multiple affordable housing options, I replied steadily. I love you, but I cannot set myself on fire to keep you warm. The phrase hung in the air between us. Mom's tears stopped abruptly as she processed my words. Dad's expression cycled through anger, disbelief, and finally, uncertain recognition. I think we're done here, Tiffany announced, standing up. Come on, Mom and Dad. Miranda has made her position clear. I remained seated as they gathered their things. The information on housing options is in this folder, I said, sliding it toward my mother. My offer of $500 monthly support for 1 year stands. I love you all, and I want to help in ways that are sustainable for everyone. Dad grabbed the folder roughly. We'll figure it out ourselves. We always do. I watched them leave, Tiffany leading the procession with Vincent trailing awkwardly behind. Only when they were out of sight did I allow my composure to crumble. I texted Nathan with shaking hands. It's over. Meet me at the car. In the privacy of Nathan's sedan, parked 2 blocks away, I finally broke down, sobs racking my body as he held me silently, understanding that no words could ease the pain of standing your ground against the people who should have been your greatest supporters. The fallout was immediate and intense. Within hours of the cafe confrontation, my phone buzzed with messages. Mom sent paragraphs about ungrateful children and the pain of maternal sacrifice. Dad's voicemails were shorter but sharper, his disappointment and anger evident in every clipped word. Tiffany took to social media, posting cryptic but pointed statements about toxic family members and betrayal when you least expect it. The extended family quickly joined the fray. Aunt Judith called Sunday morning, her usual warm tone replaced with cool disapproval. "Your parents gave you everything, Miranda. I can't understand how you could turn your back on them now." Uncle Robert texted to say he was deeply disappointed in my selfish choice. Even my cousin Stephanie, who I'd always been close with, sent a message asking, "How could you do this to them?" I responded to each communication with the same careful message. I love my family deeply and have offered financial support and help finding appropriate housing. I cannot accommodate them in my new studio apartment, but I am committed to helping in ways that are possible for me. My support system proved invaluable during these difficult days. Vanessa organized a self-care weekend, whisking me away to a spa retreat where my phone stayed locked in the hotel safe for blessed hours of peace. Nathan stepped in to field some of the family calls, his calm engineer's logic providing a buffer against the emotional manipulation. At work, my team noticed my distraction despite my efforts to compartmentalize. When I fumbled through a client presentation, my supervisor, Amanda, pulled me aside. "Whatever's going on, we've got your back," she assured me. "Take a mental health day if you need it. Greg can cover your presentation to the Johnson account." The crisis came to a head on Tuesday evening when my parents showed up unannounced at my current apartment. I wasn't home, but my roommate Olivia was packing her belongings for her upcoming move. "They just walked in like they own the place," Olivia recounted over the phone. "Your mom started measuring the second bedroom and talking about where they'd put their dresser. When I told them you weren't home and asked how they got in, your dad said the building manager let them in because they said it was an emergency." Olivia, bless her, had stood her ground. "I told them they couldn't stay here, that you were moving out at the end of the month and that I was moving out this weekend. Your mom started crying, and your dad said some pretty harsh things about you being selfish." The next escalation came via email. Dad's message arrived with the subject line, "Final offer," and contained a simple ultimatum: choose your family or your apartment. You can't have both. Despite the emotional turmoil, I remained steadfast in my commitment to offering help within my boundaries. I created a comprehensive folder of senior living options, complete with virtual tours, pricing information, and amenity lists. I scheduled appointments at 3 affordable communities and offered to accompany my parents on tours. I arranged a meeting with Diana Chen, my financial advisor, offering to pay for the consultation to help them navigate their new financial reality. Throughout this process, I maintained contact with Vincent, who provided updates on the business progress. The grand opening of Possum Paradise attracted modest attention, with local pet owners curious about the luxury offerings. However, operational problems quickly emerged. The imported Italian grooming stations required specialized maintenance, unavailable locally. The marble water features developed leaks that damaged expensive flooring. Negative reviews appeared online, citing high prices and inexperienced staff. "I'm trying to implement systems and training," Vincent confided during one call, "but Tiffany keeps changing direction whenever she sees something new on Instagram. We're hemorrhaging cash on unnecessary aesthetic changes while neglecting basic service quality." Meanwhile, my parents had reluctantly toured one of the senior communities I'd recommended, primarily because they were running out of hotel points and facing the reality of their limited cash reserves. To my surprise, Dad called afterward with a slightly softer tone. "The place wasn't terrible," he admitted grudgingly. "They have a workshop where residents can do woodworking projects. I haven't had time for that since before you girls were born." Mom remained cool during their visit to the financial advisor, but listened attentively as Diana explained their options given their current financial situation. The reality of their Social Security income versus their expenses began to sink in as Diana walked them through the numbers. The turning point came 6 weeks after our confrontation. Tiffany called me, her voice lacking its usual confidence. "The business is struggling more than expected," she admitted. We need just a little more capital to get through this initial phase. I was wondering if you could loan us some money. I can't do that, Tiffany, I replied gently. But I can help you review your business plan and identify areas to cut costs without compromising quality. She declined my offer initially but called back a week later, her voice strained. Vincent says if we don't reduce expenses, we'll be out of business in 3 months. Can you still help with that review? Over the next few weeks, I worked with Tiffany and Vincent to streamline operations, renegotiate vendor contracts, and implement a customer loyalty program. I didn't provide financial assistance, but I offered the expertise I'd gained in my career, an offering that proved more valuable than simply writing a check. Meanwhile, my parents had taken a second tour of Sunshine Meadows, the senior community, with the woodworking shop. They discovered the monthly activities calendar included bridge tournaments, which had been my mother's passion before my sister and I were born. They have raised garden beds too, Mom mentioned during one of our now weekly calls. I've missed having my tomatoes and zucchini since we sold the house. The day they signed a lease for a 1-bedroom apartment at Sunshine Meadows marked a turning point in our relationship. I helped them move in, arranging for a small storage unit for items that wouldn't fit in their new space, but had sentimental value. It's smaller than our house, Dad commented as we arranged his recliner in the corner of the living room, but I don't miss mowing that lawn or cleaning those gutters. Mom touched my arm as I hung her favorite curtains. I'm sorry for what I said before about you abandoning us. You were right about needing to make a sustainable plan. The apology wasn't complete, and many issues remained unaddressed, but it was a start. As I left them settling into their new home, I felt the first glimmers of hope that our relationship might eventually heal. Moving day arrived for me with a mixture of excitement and melancholy. Nathan and Vanessa helped carry boxes up to my tiny studio apartment, making jokes about my rigorous downsizing and organizing system. Only Miranda would have a spreadsheet for packing a studio apartment, Vanessa teased, placing a carefully labeled box in the designated corner. The spreadsheet is what allows all this to fit in 450 square feet, I countered, smiling despite my exhaustion. Over the following weeks, I transformed the small space into a beautiful, efficient home. Multifunctional furniture maximized the limited square footage. A Murphy bed folded into the wall during the day, creating space for my compact desk where I could work from home when needed. Vertical storage utilized the high ceilings, and careful color choices made the space feel larger and more open. Despite its small size, the apartment represented something enormous, my commitment to my financial goals and personal boundaries. Each month, I transferred the additional savings into my home purchase fund, watching with satisfaction as the balance grew steadily toward my target. The evolution of family dynamics happened gradually over the following months. The first dinner I hosted for my parents in my studio apartment was undeniably awkward. Mom commented on the cozy space with a tight smile, while Dad bumped his head on the Murphy bed mechanism and muttered about impractical modern living. But they came, and we shared a meal without argument, which felt like progress. Our weekly phone calls became less fraught with tension. During one Sunday conversation, Mom mentioned making friends with a retired librarian in their building. We're joining the book club together, she said, a note of genuine enthusiasm in her voice. I haven't been in a book club since before you girls were born. Dad grudgingly admitted that the woodworking shop had become his favorite place. I'm making a chess set, he reported. The instructor says I have a good eye for detail. Thanksgiving brought a surprising moment of reconciliation. After dinner in my parents' apartment, which they decorated with unexpected flair, Mom pulled me aside while Dad and Nathan discussed football in the living room. I've been thinking a lot about what you said, she began hesitantly. About us treating you and Tiffany differently. I never saw it that way, but looking back. She paused, her eyes welling with tears. I'm sorry, Miranda. You were right. We did put more pressure on you and more support behind Tiffany. It wasn't fair. The acknowledgement wasn't everything, but it was something significant. Thank you for saying that, Mom, I replied, squeezing her hand. It means a lot to hear you recognize it. My relationship with Nathan strengthened through the crisis. His unwavering support during the confrontation and aftermath demonstrated his character in ways that dating never could. "I respect how you handled that whole situation," he told me during a weekend trip to explore neighborhoods where we might eventually buy a home together. "You were firm but compassionate. You didn't cave, but you didn't abandon them either." "I learned it from watching you with your family," I admitted. "The way you maintained boundaries with your mother without cutting her off completely. It showed me it was possible." Our conversations about the future became more concrete. We discussed engagement timelines, wedding preferences, small and intimate, and our shared financial goals. The foundation we built during this crisis became the bedrock for planning our life together. Professionally, the experience transformed me in unexpected ways. Standing up to my family translated into greater confidence in client meetings. I found myself speaking up more in strategy sessions and advocating for my ideas with new conviction. When a junior analyst, Jessica, confided that her brother kept borrowing money with no intention of repaying it, I shared my experience and the lessons I'd learned about enabling versus supporting. "You can love someone without financing their bad decisions," I told her. "Sometimes the most caring thing is to say no." This newfound wisdom led me to create a financial literacy workshop for the community center near my apartment. Building Boundaries, Financial Self-Care for Women attracted an unexpected number of participants, many of whom shared similar stories of family financial entanglement. The most surprising developments came from my parents themselves. Dad joined the finance club at Sunshine Meadows, developing a newfound interest in investing with the modest sum that remained after the business investment. Mom admitted that maintaining their large house had become an exhausting burden she was relieved to be free from. "I should have downsized years ago," she confessed. "All that cleaning and maintenance for rooms we barely used." Tiffany's business continued to struggle, but with the changes we implemented, it managed to stay afloat. More significantly, Tiffany began taking responsibility for her decisions. When one of the expensive imported grooming stations broke down completely, she sold the others and replaced them with practical, locally serviceable equipment. She scaled back the luxury aesthetic in favor of quality service, gradually building a loyal customer base. "I was focusing on the wrong things," she admitted during a rare moment of self-reflection. "I wanted the business to look impressive more than I wanted it to be successful." 1 year after the confrontation that changed everything, I stood on my small balcony watching the sunset over the Chicago skyline. My phone buzzed with a notification from my banking app. My home savings fund had reached the milestone I'd set for beginning the house hunting process. A text from Mom arrived moments later, inviting me to dinner that weekend, an invitation I could now accept or decline without anxiety. The journey hadn't been easy or perfect. Family gatherings still carried undercurrents of past conflicts. Tiffany occasionally slipped into old patterns of entitlement. My parents sometimes made comments that revealed lingering expectations. But fundamental shifts had occurred in all of us. I had learned that true love means wanting growth for others, not enabling their self-destructive patterns. My parents had discovered that retirement could offer new interests and connections. Tiffany had begun the long process of taking responsibility for her choices. As I watched the golden light fade from the sky, I felt grateful for the crisis that had forced us all to change. The studio apartment that had been a point of contention had become a symbol of healthy boundaries and new beginnings, not just for me, but for my entire family.
So, what about you?
Have you ever had to make a difficult choice between what your family wanted and what you needed for yourself?
How did you handle it?
I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. If this video resonated with you, please give it a like and subscribe to my channel for more real-life stories about navigating complicated family dynamics. Share this with someone who might be struggling with similar challenges, because sometimes knowing you're not alone makes all the difference. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember, setting boundaries isn't selfish, it's essential for healthy relationships. Until next time, take care of yourselves and each other.